As you stare into the snapping maw of a ferocious beast in Monster Hunter Wilds, your survival often depends on your ability to deal damage in chunks. One of the best ways to do that is to take advantage of the series' new wound system. This gives clever hunters the opportunity to target and punish specific regions on monsters, culminating in a sudden burst of damage, with some added perks to go with it. Let's go over how wounds work in Monster Hunter Wilds. Wounds are vulnerable areas that appear on monsters after repeated attacks to the same location. Open wounds receive increased damage, indicated by the little arrows that appear on the corners around the damage numbers on the screen. They can be destroyed after repeated normal attacks, or a targeted focus strike for an additional burst of punishment. They also reward monster parts for weapon and armor crafting once destroyed, making them valuable targets for any enterprising hunters. Monster wounds go through several stages. An unwounded area that receives enough punishment will develop white markings, indicating it's been softened up. More attacks there will cause it to open up into a full-blown wound, appearing as red lacerations and glowing red when viewed using focus mode. Once it's been destroyed, it will be replaced by dark scar tissue. A scarred area can be opened up again, but it will take a lot more damage than unscarred areas. Tempered monsters can develop both standard and tempered wounds. These tempered wounds will glow blue rather than red. These work largely the same way and can be destroyed using the same methods as standard wounds. However, a tempered wound will also leave a piece behind that you can gather and load into your slinger, like this heavy piercing pod, which does a lot of damage when used on the monsters. Some monster attacks create openings that function just like wounds. When Ray Dow fires its railgun attack, for example, there's a window while it catches its breath that you can hit a focus strike and set off your wound finisher. It can be easy to miss these moments. It may help to periodically keep focus mode active during a fight to see when these opportunities present themselves. Focus strikes destroy wounds immediately, which can be a valuable tool in the middle of a fight. By default, you execute a focus strike by holding the focus button and pressing the focus strike button. If the subsequent attack hits the wound, you will go through your weapon's unique animation for a big chunk of damage, destroying the wound in the process. While all the weapons generally focus strike the same way, a few have special properties to be aware of. The longsword focus strike executes a long thrusting attack. If this hits a wound, it will combo it into a slash attack and destroy any additional wounds caught in the sword's path. Every wound destroyed by the focus strike will increase your spirit gauge level by 1. Making this one of the best ways to quickly get your longsword up to maximum spirit, and by extension, damage output. The sword and shield make for one of the most versatile focus strike combinations thanks to their different branching animations. A successful focus strike drives your dagger into the monster, and you can choose to either drag your blade down the length of the monster using the falling slash for strong damage, or leap upward using the upswing bash to create an opportunity to follow up with either a leaping slash, which can mount a monster, a falling bash, which does strong impact damage, or hit several times on the way down with a plunging thrust. For hunting horn aficionados, focus strikes on wounds open up the opportunity to hit with up to 5 consecutive notes if you can time your button presses correctly. Each note adds a small amount of damage, and if you manage to get all 5, there's an additional burst of damage at the end. The switch axe is somewhat similar to the sword and shield in that you can choose between a few ways to end your combination. By default, a focus strike will lead to a rapid series of swings culminating in a box chop, leaving you with the weapon in axe mode. However, you can interrupt this combo while it plays out by hitting the morph button, in which case it launches to sword mode and activates an explosive element discharge finisher, which you can then chain into an unbridled slash, or the very powerful full release slash if you're in the fully charged amp state. Kinsects do a lot for the insect glaive, providing various buffs, and when you have all 3, giving you access to the phenomenal rising spiral slash attack. That makes breaking wounds with your glaive especially important because when you do, your insect companion will fully replenish you on each extract, instantly setting you up to be the strongest version of yourself, and setting up your best attacks. The 2 bowguns both fire explosive shells for their focus strike. You will be limited by ammo, which will regenerate over time, and it's worth noting that these shots have a wind-up period, so it's best to be strategic when you fire them. They can also each be charged up for additional damage, though, in the case of the heavy bowgun, it can only do that in ignition mode, and it will consume part of the ignition gauge to power your shot. The bow might have the most unique focus strike in Monster Hunter Wilds. When you hold down both the focus and the focus strike button, a small icon will appear next to any wounds, tracer arrows you've embedded in your target, and exposed weak points like a Chotacabra tongue after its signature attack. After a short moment, one of the dots around the icons will fill, indicating a target lock, and each location can be locked up to 3 times. Once you have a lock, loose your arrows and they will automatically seek all of the targets that have been marked, hitting each and setting up a burst of bonus damage. You can fire after a single lock, but more locks per target fires more arrows and, by extension, does more damage, so it's best to try and get several at a time when you have the chance. When wounds open up on a monster, you can target the area for extra damage until they're destroyed, or take them out immediately by hitting them with a well-aimed strike while in focus mode. Unless you have a weapon that specifically benefits from destroying wounds, like some of those we previously outlined, it's typically smart to take advantage of the bonus damage before destroying them. Anytime you destroy a wound, there's a chance to stagger or even knock the monster down, and doing so at the right time can interrupt a big attack from a monster, or set up your team to dish out a lot of damage in a short period. Mounting monsters is another effective way to take advantage of wounds. When you're on the monster's back, you can use your knife to stab the same spot repeatedly to create a wound. If you take time moving around when the monster tries to shake you off, you can stay mounted for longer and create wounds in multiple areas. When you're ready, use your weapon attack on one of these wounds by pressing R1 or the right bumper to enter another unique finisher animation for good damage and most likely a knockdown. Your build can influence how important wounds are to your playstyle. While every weapon benefits from the extra damage, the additional perks of certain weapons mean they should get priority when you're fighting in a group. Keep in mind that everyone sees and shares the same wounds on monsters. That means if you're in a team and running a lance, for example, it's probably best to resist the urge to poke at the glowing red light and let your buddy doing Darth Maul impressions do the honors. Likewise, the reach of weapons can limit how effectively you can hit certain wounds. As tempting as that glowing weak spot on the back of this flying ray Dao is, there's almost no way this tiny dagger is going to reach it. Don't be afraid to call in your sacred and switch to something like a bow, even if only briefly, so that you don't miss out on opportunities. There are armor abilities that can enhance the effects of wounds. Flayer, for example, makes it easier to inflict wounds while also dealing additional non-elemental damage once you've done enough damage to the wound. Weakness Exploit tacks on an increased fixed percentage of additional damage to wounds based on the ability's level. And one of the best is Decimator, which you can get from the Arkveld Vitality Set bonus. This restores a chunk of your health anytime you destroy a wound on a monster. Given how frequently wounds appear, this can be a lifesaver, particularly at higher levels. And that's our breakdown on this new mechanic in Monster Hunter Wilds. Make sure to check out our guide on IGN.com for more Monster Hunter coverage, and while you're here, sneak a peek at our 28 Things Monster Hunter Wilds Doesn't Tell You. For everything else gaming, keep it right here on IGN.